Welcome to Dave Talks Comics. I'm Dave. This is my podcast where I talk about comic books, cartoons, and comic book conventions. All past episodes can be streamed or downloaded from the program's website, davetalkscomics.com. In addition to the program's website, this podcast can be found in a number of places where podcasts can usually be found, like iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. You can find my notes on what I have read at davetalkscomics.net. I'm going to be talking about some books that I read. Well, not really. I'm going to be talking about some books that I bought. I don't think there's going to be any spoilers in this episode. Okay. This will be my first recording on my new iPhone. This is an iPhone SE. See, today is November 1st, 2020. I am at the office. I have not done any work yet. I just got here maybe a half hour ago. Well, yeah, maybe more like 45 minutes ago. And I ran out to grab something to eat because I hadn't had lunch yet. And now I'm getting ready to work. But before I get to work, it's a Sunday, by the way. I just stopped by the office to take care of a few things. Before I get to work, before I came into the office, on the way in, well, kind of on the way in, it wasn't exactly on my way. I had to kind of go out of my way. I stopped by a small comic book show in Annandale. It's a spot that I've gone to before. It's probably been, I think I went back in either January or February I went, and I'm pretty sure I recorded about that one too. So I went again. They usually charge like $3 admission or $4 or something like that. They had no admission charge this time, so you could just walk in. Basically, the layout looked pretty similar to what it has been before. This is in a volunteer fire department. They have a hall in the back, I guess, for events, and they rent it out, and this is one of the things that rent it out. So, of course, everybody was wearing face masks. You're required to wear a face mask to be in the hall. And I walked back through. I was kind of perusing the tables, but I knew there was one table I wanted to go to if he was there, and he was. And I think as I overheard him, this was his first show back since the COVID thing started, the lockdown. And this is either the second or the third show they've had since then, since they started up again, because I had to cancel a couple shows on account of the lockdown. They weren't allowed to have anything. So, and who knows, maybe that's going to come again where we can't have anything. But, so like I said, it's been 11 months. Of course, I didn't go to any conventions this year, other than the two small ones I went to. I think one in January and one in February. One was up in Columbia, Maryland. This one was in Annandale, Virginia. So I didn't get to go to Heroes Con this year. That got canceled. I didn't get to go to Baltimore Comic Con. They had some online stuff, but it was last weekend. I was very busy last weekend with work, so I didn't make the time to do that. I think they recorded those things. I think I can find some of those on YouTube. So I didn't have anything particular in mind when I went to the show. Well, I had one thing. Okay, so yesterday, well, actually I should backtrack a couple weeks. About a week and a half ago, I was online, I was browsing for stuff instead of reading stuff that I already have, which is a bit of a failing on my part. But I was browsing for stuff, and one of the series that I used to read, like right near the end of the series, and I never read the beginning of the series, is Grimjack. And I started reading Grimjack with issue 72. The series ended with issue 81. I think there was a few graphic novels or miniseries after that. I haven't read any of those. So I still have issues 72 to 81, which I think the entire series was written by John Ostrander, but it wasn't, but the original artist, Tim Truman, wasn't working on the book at that point. Don't remember. I want to say it was Flint Henry was the artist at that point. Anyway, there was something about the sci-fi angle, the mercenary angle, that pulled me in. I have not gone back and read those issues since then. Somewhere around 15, 20 years ago, I picked up an auction on eBay. I got the first 13 issues of Grimjack. And for a long time, I thought that was the beginning of the series. Maybe I knew that it wasn't, but it wasn't until recently that I realized the series actually began as a backup in Star Slayer. I think Star Slayer number 10 or number 11 was the first issue. So I was online looking, and I found a copy of... So they reprinted a good chunk of Grimjack. I think it was starting in 2005 or something like that. IDW, I believe, was doing it. And they released, I believe it's 8 volumes called The Legend of Grimjack. And they were reprinting the Grimjack stories. Starting, the first volume collects the stories from Star Slayer. And then starting with volume 2, they start collecting the volumes from Grimjack. Now, as I understand it, they only collected Grimjack stories. There was also these backup stories called Munden's Bar, or that was the name of the feature. I think the stories all had their own names. And as I understand it, the Legend of Grimjack does not collect those stories. It only collects the Grimjack proper stories. So I have the first 13 issues of Grimjack. I have the last 10 issues of Grimjack. And so a couple of weeks ago, 10 days ago, something like that, I found a seller on eBay who had it for like $10, and that included shipping. So I thought, wow, great deal. At first, I was a little confused by the listing, but I looked at the picture, and the picture showed the cover of Volume 1, so I ordered it. Well, I got the book a few days ago, earlier this week, and I opened the package, and it's The Legend of Grimjack, but it was Volume 4, not Volume 1. So I was a little disappointed. I tried contacting the seller, and the seller was like, well, you'll have to go through eBay to request a refund, and then you can return the book to us. And I thought about it, and I was like, for $10, I spent $10 on something. If I'd spent $50 or $100, I probably would send it back. But I was kind of put out by the fact that they went to these lengths. And basically, they told me they didn't have a copy of Volume 1. If I wanted to return it, I could. But I was going to have to pay the shipping, and I didn't really pay any shipping going the other way, so I don't know. So basically, I would have gotten a refund for $10 after spending something like $3 or $4 to send it back to them, and I just didn't feel like doing that. So I've decided to hold on to Volume 4. Then I went back on eBay. I found another seller with a listing which is a little less ambiguous, which is definitely less ambiguous, selling Volume 1, and I've ordered that, and I just did that yesterday. Then I was looking around on eBay. Not a good idea. I was looking around on eBay, and I found a buy it now for 20 issues of Grimjack, 20 issues that I do not have for, well, it was about $20, and then if you add shipping, it was about $30. I think it was $32, actually. So I kind of agonized over it a little bit. Do I really want to buy all these issues? I'm not really ready to read these issues yet. I mean, it was issues 21 to 40. But it was such a good deal. I mean, it was like $1.60 an issue. Looked on mycomicshop.com. Those comics probably would have cost me at least $2 an issue. And then there would have been shipping on top of that. So that's $40 plus whatever shipping would have come to. Maybe another $10. I don't know. So I ordered that. So I ordered those yesterday. So then I knew that there was this convention coming up today, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, I don't know, I just bought all this stuff online yesterday. Granted, it hasn't arrived yet. Granted, I'm not going to read it as soon as it arrives, but I haven't been to a show in quite a while. It's been, I don't know, about 10 months? Well, maybe not quite 10, about 9. I guess about 9 months. Because I think it was early February the last time I went to a show. But I didn't have anything else really to do, and I kind of wanted, I've been kind of locked up with this because of the COVID. I don't really go anywhere. I don't do much, so I figured why not? I'll just spend an hour there. So I went. It was pouring rain this morning. It's much nicer now, although it's not that sunny out, but it's at least just overcast and not pouring rain. So I went to this one seller who I've bought stuff from before, going back quite a few years at these shows. His shop's name is Fan Data, and I'm not sure exactly what that refers to. I don't think he has a website. I might be wrong on that. So I just started going through his boxes, and the reason why I like him is he always has tons of stuff for 50 cents a book. So he has, 30, 40 boxes, long boxes there. That might be a bit of an exaggeration. He had at least, I'd say 20 to 30 long boxes there. Yeah. So I went through most of the boxes, and I would spot things, and I was like, well, that would be nice to have. But quite often they weren't things that were on my list. But I did find a few things that I was interested in. Well, maybe more than a few, because I ended up walking away with about 25 comic books. The first thing that I found, well, let me just go through these. Here it is. The first thing that I found was a couple issues of the 1984 New Teen Titans series. They actually had quite a few issues from there. But I was looking for issues that I did not have. And I found issue 8. And I have issues 1 through 7 and issues 9 through 14, I believe. But I didn't have issue 8. And I also picked up issue 15 because I think that issue is the last issue in one of the trade collections. I think it's collection 10 or 11 of the trade. And I'm up to issue collection number 8. So I picked up issues 8 and 15, and issue 16 definitely seems to start a new storyline. Let's see, I'm just flipping through these comics, organizing them a bit. So there's issue 15, and I think issue 16 starts a new story with the Omega Men, which I guess would be the first crossover with the Omega Men since, issues 23, 24, 25, and annual number 1. Yeah. Which was the first issue of New Teen Titans that I bought ever. Way back in 82, I believe. So I picked those 2 issues up, and I continued to look, and for a while I wasn't really finding much. And then I ran across an issue of House of Mystery that I've been meaning to buy for quite some time. And this is the House of Mystery from the Vertigo series, House of Mystery. This issue is from August of 2009, issue number 14. And this has I used to read the House of Mystery series back then. I think at one point I got rid of them, but I had the trades for the first 6 volumes. And I liked it, but my problem with the series was that it kept feeling like they were just teasing, like there was something coming up, and it felt like they were never getting anywhere. And so I think after 6 volumes, I finally gave up. And I think the series got canceled before it ended. I mean, it was a good story. It was a good series. I liked the artwork. I liked the stories, but it didn't feel like it was going anywhere. It just felt like it was throwing new things up against the wall. But one of the interesting things about that series is that each issue would have a backup story. So there was a storyline that ran throughout the series about these people who were trapped in the House of Mystery. And there was these doorways, and these doorways would open up into other worlds, but they would always keep coming back to the House of Mystery. But the 14th issue had a backup story done by, at least drawn, by Gilbert Hernandez. And it was, these stories quite often had twists, but this one had a twist that just it was like a double-sided twist, or it had like two twists to it. It just really blew my mind. So I don't have the trade anymore that had that story in it. So when I found this issue, they had a bunch of issues of House of Mystery, but I just picked up this one because I just liked that backup story so much. See, I'm looking around at the things that I've bought, and I think the next thing that I picked out is a series called Cinder and Ash. This is a mini-series. It's 4 issues long. It's by Jerry Conway and Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. It looks like it is a noir. It's something that's been on my list for a while, something I want to pick up. And for $2, I couldn't resist the opportunity to pick this up. I love both their work. I think both of them do great jobs in their stuff. Even when I don't love the story they do, I think the work they do is great. And like I said, for $2 for this complete series, I doubt I could have found it for $2 on eBay. I figured, why not? Next thing that I found is something which I have in trade, but I didn't have the individual issues. But I wanted to get it. But I've been thinking about rereading it. And I read it, the last time I read it, I read it back in the 80s when it first came out. And the last time I read it was maybe 8-10 years ago, something like that. And that's Camelot 3000. And, of course, the irony of this story is that it is written by Mike Barr, who also wrote Batman and the Outsiders, which is a series which I had fond memories of, but I've read now the first collection, which collects the first 13 issues plus the preview, and I just have not been that impressed by it. It just did not live up to my memories of it. But Camelot 3000, I know a few years back, like I said, it might have been 10 years ago, still lived up to my memories of it, and I'm not sure why. I think I speculated about this in one of my entries on Batman and the Outsiders in my blog. When I was writing, I think I said something about, maybe it's because he has source. This is not original stuff. But for some reason, this series really spoke to me. And having the original issues, I'm not sure if there's extra material in them, but I was just interested in getting. They didn't have all the issues. I have issue 11. They had 1 through 11, so I picked up 1 through 10. So that was, $5. I can't argue with that. It's a really good price. They were all boarded and backed. Bagged and boarded. Bagged and boarded. That's what I meant to say. So I was thinking about going at that point, but I wasn't sure. So I kept looking a little more. And I found, let's see, which order? I found a couple issues of The Unknown Soldier that I don't have. For some reason, I want to try and collect the last issues of The Unknown Soldier. I think most, if not all of them, are 50-cent issues. So I found 2 of them. I found issue 244 and 250. 250 not only has The Unknown Soldier on the cover, it also has Sergeant Rock, The Haunted Tank, Mademoiselle Marie, and The Losers. And it says a 250th issue spectacular. But it's only 50 cents, so I assume it's just regular size. It's not extra size. And the other issue was issue 244, which has one of the Losers on the cover, as well as The Unknown Soldier, and that's Captain Storm. And it's one of the stories takes place in the Pacific theater of war. That was one of the interesting things about The Unknown Soldier. Sometimes he'd be in the Pacific, sometimes he'd be in Europe. And I don't know if there's ever any real reconciliation or attempt to explain how he moved back and forth between the two. Obviously, it's not impossible for him to have done that, but if he was working undercover most of the time, especially in Europe, then presumably it was presumably it'd be difficult to fly halfway around the world. So another thing I found, and this fills in a hole in my collection, well, a couple things actually that fills in holes in my collection. One is X-Men Classic number 59, and I believe this collects, that is funny. That is too funny. I didn't notice this until just now. Not that there's anything wrong with the issue. This is one of the issues that's set during the Brood saga. I believe, I'm not sure which issue this is, but Wolverine's on the cover fighting one of the Brood. And this is one of the Mignola covers. Mike Mignola did a number of covers for X-Men Classic. I think I have most of them at this point. I think there's still a few that I'm missing. But in the background, in the foreground, you see Wolverine fighting one of the Brood. And in the background, you see Colossus on the ground. And then near him are three people. One is obviously Cyclops. One is Corsair. And the other looks like Tigra. Was Tigra in this issue? I don't think so. I wonder if he was supposed to be Hepzibah. And somebody gave Mike Mignola the wrong information. And so he put Tigra on the cover. I don't know. Just noticed that. It's the first time I noticed that. So I kept looking because the deal was 50 cents a piece, but you could get 10. You buy 10, you get one free. So I think I was at 21 at that point, or 20, and so I was going to get 2 free. And so I then found something else that fills in part of my collection, which is the official Teen Titans Index number 3. I think they had all 5 of them, but I have the other 4. This is the only one I'm missing. So this is to build up part of my what did I call it? My reference comics library. And I have some of the other official books, like there's an official Justice League series, there's an official index for I think there's a Doom Patrol set, Justice League, and I'm blanking on others, but there's others that feature DC Comics. So the last thing I found, because I only needed one more, but I was thinking about, I was okay with getting more than just one more. And I kind of jumped back and forth between this guy's boxes, and I hadn't exactly gone in order through them, but there was like one section I hadn't finished going through, and it began somewhere in the seas. And so I I went into the first box, and I only had to go about halfway through before I found something that I wanted. And this is something I actually only found out about. I don't remember ever hearing about this before, but I only found out about it last night when I was searching on eBay, or maybe it was on My Comic Shop. And this is from First Comics, and it's a mini-series called Crossroads. And what it features crossovers between different characters that First Comics published. So the first issue, and like I said, I have not read these. I do not have the information on what the story is behind these stories, if it's all one big story or if it's 5 individual stories or how it is. The first story is Whisper and Sable, and I have the first 10 issues of Whisper, but I have not read them yet. And I think I talked about that on an earlier podcast from earlier this year. And that's by Stephen Grant and Cynthia Martin. The next issue is Sable and Badger. And that's by Mike Barron, Angel Medina, and Rod Wiggum. The third issue is Badger and Luther Ironheart. No idea who Luther Ironheart is. I don't remember hearing that name before. And it looks like American flag is kind of on the cover. I think that's flag, or is it? Anyhow, this is by Roger Salek and Joe Staton. And the fourth issue is Grimjack and Judah Maccabee. Judah Maccabee is a character from Nexus. I know that much, although I think I have like one issue of Nexus in my collection. And yeah, that's interesting. Grimjack is holding a sword almost like it's a golf club. That's interesting. And this one's by Roger Salek and Sean McManus, so not Mike Ostrander, because Ostrander didn't work on this. And then the fifth issue is Grimjack, Dreadstar, and Nexus. And this one's by Mike Barron and Luke McDonald. So I have yet to take these out of the bags. I'm not too sure what they are all about, but I'm intrigued, and for $2.50, I figured, why not? So that's everything I got today. It's about 25 comics at the show in Annandale. Hopefully I didn't get COVID. Hopefully I was wearing a mask, of course. I spent about an hour there, all at this one guy's booth. He's very nice. And he usually has all kinds of stuff. I found one of the issues of Whatever Happens to the Man of Tomorrow the last time I bought from him, which usually goes for like $10 or $15, So you can find some really good deals at his booth. He had like 4 issues from Avengers Forever there. If I had found all 12 or even like the first 6, I might have taken them because that's one of those series I've been meaning to read, but he didn't have them. So I didn't buy the ones. He had like 1, 2, 4, 7, and 11 or something like that. So that's everything I got at the show today. I think that's all I have for right now. Let's see. I'm still reading Terry and the Pirates. I'm into March of 1938, which means I'm almost 2/3 of the way through Volume 2. I am back to reading Captain America. I've just started the story that has Deathlock in it. Deathlock. On the first issue, 286. And my plan is, of course, to read up to 301. And I also picked up Volume 7 of Ikigami, The Ultimate Limit. So that's basically where I am at in terms of reading. I recently finished reading Xenozoic Tales. I read the entire series. I also picked up the Modern Masters volume on Mark Schultz and read the sections in there on Xenozoic Tales. And I have some notes up. Well, maybe by the time this gets released, all my notes will be up. But I took notes on that, took notes on all 14 issues that I read, plus the issue of Death Rattle. I guess there's 15 issues. And I know there's something else that I finished off. Well, that's the indie book that I was reading, and the DC book, was Batman and the Outsiders, and I talked about that a little before. So that's it for now, and maybe I'll be back at some point, and hopefully in the not-too-distant future, and record something else about what I've been reading, what I've been watching, which lately has been Captain Harlock. I'm back to Captain Harlock. I talked about that on an episode way back when. I'm rewatching that. And I also finished off Young Justice, or Season 2 of Young Justice, which I thought was quite good. I don't know if I liked it. I think I still prefer Season 1, but Season 2 was very, very good. And I found a good podcast for that, although I think the hosts go a little overboard in there. I think they like the show considerably more than I do. And their devotion to it is considerably more than mine is, or even my devotion to doing this podcast. So I think that's about it for now. I've got other stuff I need to do. So this is Dave signing off. Okay, just a few follow-up notes on what I just recorded. So a few corrections, additions, addendums, etc., etc. First, New Teen Titans number 15. This is from the 1984 series, the Baxter series. Number 15 is the last issue that's in the 10th collection in these series of trade paperbacks that they've released recently in the last few years. I believe there's 11 of them. It's the last one in volume 10, but according to mycomicshop.com, it is the part 1 of a 4-part story which involves the Omega Men. So I guess, I don't know, I've got all the issues now from volume 10, but I've only got part 1 of that story. I don't know. And I'm not sure if that's official canon, but that's how mycomicshop.com has it broken out. And they're pretty good for that kind of stuff, breaking out the story so you know where one story begins and ends, because quite often they wouldn't label stories way back when, like over 35 years ago, that story probably about 35 years ago, that story was from, and even older stories, and they would, they label them. It's really good. It's really cool. Okay, anyway, next thing, Camelot 3000. The last time I read that was 12 years ago this month. It was November of 2008. And of course, like I said, I read it when it first came out in the 1980s. I think I read a friend's copy. I don't think I ever really had copies of my own. X-Men Classic number 59. It reprints X-Men number 155, and I opened up the issue, and yes, Tigra actually is in that issue. I had just completely forgotten about that. There's a part where the X-Men go to the Avengers Mansion, and Tigra was one of the Avengers at that point. I had a subscription to the X-Men when these issues originally came out. I remember reading them and really enjoying them. That whole Brood saga was great, and this was like right the beginning of the Brood saga. And this was the cover where it looked like Colossus had been killed. But I think I liked the Mike Mignola cover better, with Wolverine fighting one of the Brood on the cover. And and then there's of the Mignola covers, which go from issue, I believe it's 57 to 71, I think, or 70, something like that. So it's about a year's worth of covers that he did for X-Men Classic. I have all but 4 of them. I'm missing the covers to issues 57, which they actually had there and I could have picked up, and if I checked my list, I would have known that. 62, 68, and 70. And those issues reprint Uncanny X-Men 153, 158, 164, and 166. I was looking back. I have records on when I bought things, at least going back about 15 years or more. And I picked up the official Teen Titans Index number 3 this time around. I didn't realize how long it had been since I picked up the other issues in this series. I picked up the other 4 issues 4 years ago, 2016. I think I got 3 of them at Heroes Con and 1 at Baltimore Comic Con or something like that. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Whisper 1 through 10 I bought in September of 2019, and I mentioned that on episode 169 of Dave Talks Comics. And Captain Harlock, I watched that probably about 5 years ago, or something close to that, and I talked about the first 8 episodes of that on episode 68 of Dave Talks Comics. So that's it for episode 174 of Dave Talks Comics. Dave Talks Comics can be found at davetalkscomics.com, as well as wherever podcasts are usually found, like iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. You can keep up with what I have currently been reading at davetalkscomics.net and what I have been watching at smallscreenscrawls.blogspot.com. I usually update those blogs on a daily or weekly basis. Well, sometimes it's every 2 or 3 weeks. Links to Small Screen Scrolls can be found at davetalkscomics.com or davetalkscomics.net under the Other Blogs header on the right-hand side of the page. .com for the cast, .net for the notes. If you have comments or questions, I can be reached at davetalkscomics@gmail.com, on Twitter @DaveTalksComics, or leave a comment on my website. I'm Dave. Thank you for listening. This is episode 174. I think it's episode 174. I thought it was when I wrote this down, but now that I look at it, I'm starting to wonder. So let me double check. Yes, it is episode 174. Awesome. Now back to my script. Not that I have a script. Ha ha ha.